This is the Researcher Innovator Podcast. This is not your typical podcast. This is episode 001. It's a narrative first science podcast. This is not just a talk show. This is the blueprint episode that teaches listeners how to listen to the podcast as much as what it's about. So, this is behind every breakthrough is a question. So, welcome, researchers, innovators. Before this was a podcast, before it was a concept, before it was a name, it was a moment. A moment where I realized that the most powerful discoveries in science didn't begin in labs or journals. They began in lived experiences. In patterns noticed too quietly, in questions asked too softly, in stories that never made it into the data. This podcast exists because I've lived inside that space where science meets story, where curiosity meets resistance, and where research becomes human. This is Researcher Innovator. So let's get into segment one, the personal journey. Let me start where research actually starts, not with certainty, but with curiosity. Like many women in the science spaces, I noticed something early on. The questions I cared about weren't always the questions being asked. Why do outcomes differ so widely? Why are some experiences dismissed? Why does lived experiences get edited out of evidence? There were moments of doubt, moments where my curiosity felt inconvenient, moments where I had to decide whether to stay quiet or to stay curious. And I can definitely recall the moment where I made a decision to stay quiet, which in turn affected my curiosity as well as affected my forward movement. So again, this is where Researcher Innovator was born when I made a decision to stop being quiet, to stop allowing my questions to be unanswered, and to just focus on choosing curiosity. So I hope that you guys are really enjoying this podcast. Subscribe, comment below if you enjoy it, and let's move on to segment two, the story of arc of discovery. So in every breakthrough, it follows a story arc. Even if we pretend it doesn't, there's always an introduction, which is the problem quietly noticed, a conflict, some type of resistance or bias or lack of resources, a climax, a discovery, a shift, a reframing, and a resolution, an impact, sometimes immediately or sometimes it's often delayed. So in this specific podcast, we won't strip research of that arc. We'll restore it, right? Because when you understand the story behind the science, you understand the science more deeply. So let's go ahead and take everything in, breathe, and take it in. And let's move on to segment three. So, what a researcher really is. How do we define it? How did I define it, right? So, a researcher innovator isn't defined by credentials alone. She is defined by attention. She notices what others overlook. She asks better questions. She treats people not as variable, but as context. Often she is shaped by mentors who challenge her thinking, systems that underestimate her, communities that needed solutions long before the data caught up. In Researcher Innovator, we don't flatten people into experts. we develop them as characters.